I'll bet you can hear me now. I love when I forget to turn the microphone on. Anyway, we'll just, I've got the sound up on here. As soon as I hear myself, I'll mute it, and that will be that. Yeah, of course. I'll bet you can hear me now. There we go. All right, so now that you can hear me, hi, Pat. All right, let's try that all again. All right, so first off, I don't know why the microphone is so damn tinny. Yeah, it sounds like I'm coming through an old AM transistor radio, and I don't know why. It's usually a lot better than that, so I don't know what's going on there. Let's see here. Click on that. That just echoes. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see, boost that up a little bit, maybe. Okay, so, yeah, serious echo, and I don't know what's going on with this. Like I said, the microphone is doing weird things. Now I'm running a system CPU at 99%, so hopefully this will continue to go and we won't fade out on you. I don't know what's going on. Let me see here. If I can always move closer to the mic. Let's see here. We are in August. All right, so the last month went really, really, really fast. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm working on stuff on Witchcraft Academy, and then Dragonfest comes up really, really fast. And close one iteration. John, you got too many damn windows open. That's why you've got an echo. I've got an echo, but we'll call it good for now. That and the AM transistor radio effect. I'm still not sure what's going on with that. Anyway, so this month went really fast. between all the work I've been doing on Witchcraft Academy and getting ready for Dragonfest, which, considering I saw somebody from New Zealand there, I'm going to say it's an international pagan festival. I and another guy who started going the same year worked out that Dragonfest this was the 31st year for Dragonfest. I've been going off and on for 28 years. So this is a long time investment that I've been putting into this festival. And I had a wonderful time. This is the second year back after a 5-year hiatus, and I camped with some great people, had some wonderful times, and got to have fun around the fire and the drummers and dancers and all that, and it was a lot of fun. And anyone who went there, I don't know, we have more people watching tonight than I've seen in a long time. You're all waiting to see how badly I screw this up, since I have no guest. It's just going to be me talking. So fortunately, you're talking in chat, and I put in there, I'll put it in again, there's a URL. There you go, right there, which you should bear. You'll hear me talk about it in about 20 seconds. That if you go there, it'll want you to create an account, just like YouTube does when you want to log on to chat here. But if you've got a microphone attached to your computer, you can actually use it and talk to me live on the air while we're doing this, and it might make things go a little bit more interestingly. So because we can hear you as you ask the questions, as opposed to me reading off the chat. But anyway, what I thought I would do tonight, and I suspect that everybody who's on is probably well past this point, because most of the people I know have been in this lifestyle for years. But I thought, because most of the people who are out there and looking for such stuff are brand new, I thought I would go through and we would talk a little bit about how do you become a witch, or more precisely, how do you go about finding your way on this pagan path. And it's interesting because most of us who have been doing this for any length of time, we already know. We don't think about that anymore, because, well, it was so long ago we've forgotten how difficult it can be, how hard it can be to find the right resources. And so we a lot of times forget about how we found it, how we found what we've got. And so I thought I'd go through that a little bit, because it's got to be the most asked question I get, and that is, how do I start? And really, the answer is not difficult. First off, I think most people are aware that there are a lot of books out there. There are probably hundreds by this point. I don't tend to read many books lately, because in the last, 5-10 years, because most of the beginning books, well, all of the beginning books tend to say the same thing, just using different words. So I haven't bought any new books in years, but there have been books out for the past 30 or 40 years that are excellent books. Authors like Scott Cunningham, even Raymond Buckland, who is the father of American witchcraft. Fantastic books to get you started on how do you start this path, how to get along, what to do, rituals, what the holidays are, what witches do. Fantastic resources for that. But beyond that, I find that there are a lot of people around the country who live out in the country, outside of cities, where it is more difficult to find a community, where it's difficult to find other people. I remember going down and visiting Charlotte, North Carolina. It's been 15, 20 years ago now. I was actually down there for a science fiction convention, and someone happened to notice my ring and my pentagram, and come up and ask, "Hey, are you a witch?" Why, yes, I am. and they were so happy to see someone who, because they thought they were the only one within 1,000 miles, and within 5 minutes somebody else had come up and noticed my ring and my pentagram and like, are you a witch? And I'm busy talking to this first girl saying, yeah, we're just having a great conversation, and she's saying there's nobody within 1,000 miles that she can talk to, and all of a sudden 2, 3, 4 people come up because I can wear the jewelry, because I don't have to worry about living with these people. And it was an instant neon sign saying witch, and they were really excited to meet me and to meet each other. And that's one of the problems I've noticed is, unless you're in a big city somewhere, it can be really difficult to find people who are like you, who even if they're at the same level of you as you, at least you've got somebody you can talk to, and that alone is a huge part of this path. You know, finding somebody who you can talk to and share your discoveries with, that's huge. And a lot of people, it seems, don't have that. So what I tell people when they email me, because I don't know where they're at, I know that they're interested, they're curious, they want to know more, or they've said, hey, I've been studying, but I'm solitary. How do I find other people? My first thing to do is to go onto Google and type in whatever city space witches. I know that if you type into Google Denver Witches, my meetup, Denver Metro Witches meetup, is the first thing that you're going to see. And so, you know, if you're looking for a community, if you're looking for others, type in your city and follow by the word witches and see what comes up. You may be surprised. You know, I've had people who I've had people here in town who said, I've been looking for the community for 2 years and couldn't find it. To which my thought was, well, where are you looking? Because it's not hard to find. We're pretty much out, and we've got Pagan Pride Day every year. This year it's really early. It's the end of this month instead of September. But we are out there all over the place. We've got the Witches Ball. We've got all sorts of stuff going on all over, along the year. So we're not hard to find. If it takes you a couple of years to find the Denver community, you're just really not looking all that hard. But in other places, certainly in the south of the country, it can be much more difficult to lost audio. Yeah, Meetup is another good one. Beat Girl, I haven't done anything, so if you lost audio, I think it's on your side. I'm assuming everybody else can hear me. I can always just go over here and check. Really not looking all that hard. I can still get audio, so I think it's on your side, Beat Girl. Not that she can hear me if she lost audio. Anyway, let me just type this in. There we go. And there we go. Witchfox.com. Yeah. Phoenix just added Witchfox.com. Witchfox is one of those resources. Back when I started, it was the place on the web for any new witch to go and to look for articles and information. And I assume they still do. They had their Witches of the World, which was a really good resource that basically anybody who was, and the way they word it is like, well, if you have a coven or an organization, go ahead and set up a thing here and give us your contact information so the people who come looking can find you. And honestly, it can be solitary, single people who happen to have some resources could do the same thing. But I don't know how up to date that information is. I know I've got some really old information out there on Witchfox. I should probably go take a look and update it, because for all I know, the WPBN information is still up there, and that hasn't been going for 10 years now. So that's the only problem with Witchfox is that the data may or may not be up to date. You may go looking and find some people close to you and come to find out that the information is way out of date. Meetup is another one. Beat Girl was talking about that, and yeah, you know, if you're on Meetup and you type in Wicca, witchcraft, anything like that, spirituality, you'll find a whole bunch of meetups, not just pagan, but all sorts of stuff that you'll see all sorts of possible meetups, and you'll want to go and check them out. Especially if they sound like they're not quite what you're looking for. It's one of the reasons, I took over the meetup I run. I didn't start it. And while it's called Denver Metro, we do attract people from all over the metro area, but I have it up north here, where north side of town where I live, because it's just easier to find a place that's big enough and has enough parking. When I tried to have it in central Denver, we either had a place that was really small but lots of parking, or no parking and a nice big spot. So it was really hard to find a place to do that. Let's see. Phoenix says, let's see. About.com has a place too. Yeah, About.com is an interesting website. They have stuff for just about everything. And hey, I see Beat Girl in the. That's why she lost her audio. I see Beat Girl in the other chat. Hey, Beat Girl, say something. I need to find out which one this is hooked into. I'm gonna go ahead and click on these, and she's in there, so she should be able to hear us. But anyway, yeah. So I'm just gonna type into her real quick. This is the first time I had a chance to actually test this out. I've got this software. It's for gaming basically, but if it works out properly, you should be able to hear anybody who logs in. Anyway, so yeah, about.com, they're very, what I would call light. They've got a whole bunch of stuff out there, but it has no depth, it has no detail. It's 30,000 foot view of everything. They'll talk about how to cast a circle, and it will be accurate steps. It's just that they don't go into any detail about what you should be thinking or focusing on when you're casting and things like that. So it's very lightweight. It's not, it's a good resource for basic, very, very basic. I would put it to an equivalent of what I've got on Witchcraft Academy under 5-Minute Magic. 5-Minute Magic is basically any kind of magic I can describe in 5 minutes, and give you the full rundown in 5 minutes, which means it's a very high 30,000 foot view of it. There's way much more than that, but it'll at least give you something to work with. And that's kind of how I look at about.com. It's got some good information, and it seems to be fairly accurate, but it's just not very detailed. The internet, the internet has its good places and its bad places. There are all sorts. I heard somebody. Hey, Beat Girl, is that you? Maybe, maybe not. Oh, that's my system. Okay, I can hear you. See, can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hey, Beat Girl, is that you? Let's see. Maybe, maybe not. Oh, that's my system. Okay. Well, maybe they can. Maybe say something again. Yep. Hold on. Let's see here. Now try it. I've got a mixer going, and it's I gotta remember which one does what. I bet they can hear you now.
I can hear you, but I can't hear you over the program that's running on my phone. I can only hear you through the YouTube channel.
Really? That's interesting. So you're hearing. That's why you're so delayed. You're hearing me about 23 seconds.
Now?
Yeah, you're hearing me about 23 seconds after. That's interesting. I'm surprised you can't hear me. Let me see something real quick here.
Let's try it again.
Okay, I'm not muted, so that's good. That may be also why I'm getting such an echo. I can hear you fine. I think they can hear you. Say something real quick. Yeah, you're hearing me about 23 seconds after. That's interesting. Yeah, that what you just heard is the live stream. Anyway, can you guys hear Beat Girl as she talks? She said several things. I don't know whether you can, and if you'll type it into chat, we should be able to get her to into the chat.
Test.
Test. See, oddly, I'm kind of surprised she can't hear me. I'm not showing up when I'm. I wonder why that is. That's interesting. Okay, so that's all right. So there's part of the problem is that I'm connected, but okay, so they can hear you. All right, so for whatever reason, I'm not, and I see that I'm not broadcasting over this chat, and I don't know why. That's interesting. I should see here, and that's not going to help either. That's interesting. I've got everything wide open and should be. That's interesting. I wonder why I'm not broadcasting, because as you can see, I'm not broadcasting. Yeah, it's about a 30-second delay, Beat Girl. That's what's going on. And yeah, it's YouTube. They are huge delay. I don't know why. And then, of course, when I set everything up, they want to know if I want to add delay for some reason. Like, no, why would I want to add delay? It's already 30 seconds beyond what I said. Yeah, I understand, Beat Girl. You can't hear me in the chat phone, and I see what's going on. I'm not showing up as broadcasting, and I don't know why. Let's see here. Let me check something real quick. Anyway, so basically, if you say something, we can all hear you, which allows for us to actually talk somewhat. Let's see here. I wonder. Oh, I bet I know what the problem is. Let me see here. I bet you can hear me now. I had it set for push to talk. That's why you couldn't hear me when I was talking. I wasn't pressing the button to broadcast. So I bet you can hear me now, Beat Girl. Yeah. So say something. Say hi to the people. Now she's going to be shy. Anyway, so now that I've futzed around for 22 minutes, oh, this is going to be the world's worst live stream. I can see it now. It'll probably get 1 million hits just for people watching me screwing this up. It's been 20 years since I've had to do a live show by myself, and it's much harder than it looks, believe me. Especially when you're running all of the equipment at the same time. If I had somebody who could run all the equipment for me and all I had to do was talk, that'd be great. Oh, just restarted the program. Okay, so it should be on here in a minute. But it'll at least allow her and I to have a bit of a conversation. And anybody who's on now, on the live show, I sent out, if you want me to, I can send it out again. I sent out a link that will allow you to actually get on and talk if you've got a microphone. And I think, because the old-fashioned call-in show kind of thing. I figured that would be a lot more entertaining than just listening to me talk. Since I don't have an actual scheduled guest, I figured if I got the audience involved, it might be a little more interesting. People come up with more ideas than I do, especially since, contrary to popular belief, I don't know it all. I don't know everything. Even though there are some people who will swear that I think I do. In fact, it was kind of funny. At Dragonfest Friday night, I think it was Friday night, they had the multiple drawing down, and I went for the first time in I don't know how many years. Last time I went to a drawing down, I was one of the people drawing down, and it was kind of funny because the goddess I was taken to was Lakshmi, who is a Hindu goddess of prosperity. And she's sitting there across from me, and she's got my hands, and she's saying, "I'm giving you I'm giving you confidence." And I looked her in the eye and I said, "You realize that there are people out here who will tell you that I have an overabundance of confidence." Hey, Beat Girl, can you hear me now? I saw her log out and log back in. But yeah, I've got, confidence is not a problem for me. I've got more than my share. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't confident about who I am and what I'm doing. But I thought that was kind of amusing that she thought she should give me more confidence. Back to what we were talking about as far as getting started. Having books is a good start. It's a way to get things going. It's a way to learn some of the basics. But finding a community, finding others around you, finding people who can, take you in and events to go to, people to talk to, that's a huge part of learning your path. Because now, even if they don't think that they're any more advanced than you are, with a community, with other people, you have others you can talk to, and they're going to say things that may or at some point may cause you to change the way you see things. And I can tell you, that's happened for me many, many times. Talking with friends who are peers, and they'll say things, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, let me think about that. Let me think that over. And suddenly I find that I'm changing a lot of my own belief. Well, not beliefs, but the way I look at things changes over time, and that's normal. So having people to talk to is a huge boost to being able to figure out what your path is. Forums, meetups, and even magic shops. Yeah, Phoenix, I agree. Magic shops. I'm assuming what you mean by magic shops are metaphysical bookstores, as opposed to stage magic. And yeah, I agree that metaphysical bookstores are one of the better resources if you have one near you. And I think most larger cities around the country have at least one. And if hopefully the person behind the counter knows something. I have actually had people tell me that they've gone to one of the, probably the oldest metaphysical bookstore in town, and try and talk to the person behind the counter, and the person behind the counter has no idea what they're talking about, which I find sad and actually difficult to believe, because that was, when it was at its prior location, that was one of my big resources for finding what was going on in the community. What's happening in the next 3 months, because they always had flyers for whether it was the Witches Ball or Magical Mayfest or whatever. If there was something going on throughout the year, they always had flyers and information on how I could get involved. So I would say that metaphysical bookstores are a huge source for information on what's going on in your local community. Absolutely. Assuming you have one, or assuming that there's one somewhat nearby. I know that, there's a lady, I don't know if she's watching right now or not. She's gets involved with a lot of this stuff. She's out in Otis, Colorado, out in the middle of the plains, and if you look at a map, it's it literally is halfway to Kansas or Nebraska. And I don't know that out there, I don't know that there's anything anywhere nearby. I think probably the closest place for her to go to find some of this stuff would be Denver, and that's a couple hours away. So there are certainly people who are out there in the country, in the middle, I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere, but for all intents and purposes, away from any large city or any city of any size. They have it rough, because they're familiar with a lot of the concepts. I mean, if you're out in farm country, you're very much a part of the land. You're part of the nature. This all makes sense to you because you were raised this way, whether they want to admit it or not. But finding more information and finding more people can be difficult because it could be 2-3 hour drive to get to anywhere that has any kind of a community, and so that makes things a little bit difficult. On the other hand, you have probably have plenty of space to work with, and can enjoy your own rituals and your own stuff out in your property without having to worry about the neighbors. But yeah, finding community, finding other people who do this is a huge part of getting on track, because now you've got people you can ask questions of. That's part of why I started this up, was I wanted to do it live so that people who are interested or new could come on into the chat and ask questions, and I and my guest, if I have one, can answer some of these questions, give some answers to people so that they have somewhere to go, somewhere to look. Because if you're brand new to this, you don't know what you don't know, which was a favorite saying of Sage Bear. You don't know what you don't know, and unless there's someone to tell you, you really are never gonna know some of this stuff. And so having a community, doesn't have to be a large community, but having other people, even a couple of other people. One of the things I'm working on right now is on Witchcraft Academy is a interactive map, so that anybody who has access to it can go in there, scroll in, and it's a Google map for all intents and purposes. So you scroll in and you zoom into where you're at, and you can put a pin on the city where you are. And the idea is that everybody who has access to it puts a pin in the city where they are. Now all of a sudden, you who thought you were all by yourself and there wasn't another witch for 1,000 miles, all of a sudden you find out, hey, there's a couple of people close by. And with a forum, and be able to talk to them and get to know them a little bit. Sean, let me shoot you. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. That's exactly what he typed in. I don't know what I'd do without him. But where was I? Oh yeah, the interactive map. So the idea is to give people a way of connecting with each other, so that they'll know that they aren't all alone. One of the problems with being in a spiritual path that is not mainstream and somewhat misunderstood is you can't just go out and say, hey, I'm a witch. I decided I'm a witch. Everybody say hi. You have to do it with a Gabby Hayes accent. I can't do a Gabby Hayes. I'm not sure I even can think of what a Gabby Hayes accent is right now. So yeah. Later after the show, I'll probably think that's even funnier than it is. But we have a helicopter going over top. It's funny. The helicopter picks up nicely on the microphone. I just wish I knew why I was so tinny. But the idea, of course, is to get people who are new to into contact with other people. That way they can, if there is none, they can form a community, or at least find other people who are learning the way they are. It's a lot easier to learn this stuff when you have somebody to practice with. So I would say that next to reading books and going online and reading there, if you can find someone or more than someone who you can talk to, even if it is online, that is a good resource, because now you've got other people you can talk to about it. You can move ideas back and forth. More than one person writing a ritual. Hey, here's what I did. Here's the idea I've got. Read through this and tell me what you think. I know that has been a huge help for me in learning how to write ritual, how to craft spells, all of that. By being able to give it to somebody and say, here's what I've got, here's what I want to do. read through this, what do you think? And then all of a sudden they come up with all these suggestions like, oh, hey, that's a cool idea. I'd never would have thought of that. So yeah, finding people that you can talk to is huge. Okay, so Christine, being misanthropic. I just spent a lot of time researching online. Okay, well, and yes, if you find some good resources online, that's part of the problem. There's a shit ton of resources online. The problem is most of them are horrible. They are pretty much useless, or everyone says exactly the same thing as the one before it, and so they're just regurgitating the same stuff that is on every other site. If you can find some decent resources that have information that you don't find anywhere else, that's helpful, but they're hard to find. They don't tend to show up on Google very well because they're the people who are writing those resources aren't very good at SEO. They have their information, they have good information, but finding it can be difficult. But yes, absolutely. Finding online resources. There's one resource I like to go to is sacredtexts.com, which has pretty much every sacred text you can think of from pretty much every spiritual path you can come up with. And so they've got a whole lot of information out there that is free and available to anyone. Trying to read out for the good from the bad is a bugaboo. Well, yes. I like the way you worded that. I don't know that I've ever used bugaboo before, at least not in a sentence. Yeah, finding good information online is an occupation in and of itself, because Google will send you all sorts of places. There's all sorts of resources that Google is aware of. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of them not necessarily all that valuable. They may have good and accurate information, but it more than likely is the same thing you read on the last site. It may or may not be the exact same words. They may reword it, but yeah.
I'd also like to add to that.
Please do.
That you're looking at, it's personal paths that people have taken. So what works for somebody might not work for you, but what works for them works very well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to follow it, but that you need to find something that you believe in that you can follow.
Yay, I can talk to somebody. This would make things much easier. And I agree with what you're saying. I'm of the belief that having 3 or 4 or 100 websites that all say the same thing, once you've read it, it doesn't do you much good because they're all saying the same thing. You've read it once and so you've got it. But what you say is as far as what works for one person may or may not work for another one, absolutely. And that's part of going out there and finding all these resources and finding people, finding out other people who do things differently. So you can find other ways of doing things that may or may not work better for you. But I will say that one of the things that I teach my students, my personal students, is when they're doing their first year in a day with me, we do ritual and everything the same, a specific way, and we do it the same way every time. And the purpose of that is so that they get really good at doing ritual that way. Now they've got a foundation, a baseline, so that they can compare anything that they find, anything new that they find. They can now compare to what they've been doing for the past year. Does it work better? Well, if it does, go ahead and adopt it. If it doesn't work any better, or if it works worse, why would you use it? And she's not going to reply.
Sorry, still trying to figure this out.
You're good. I can hear you. They can hear you. Just keep talking.
And that was exactly the point I was trying to make is, there are tons of different resources out there, and labeling them as right or wrong isn't necessarily something that I like to do. I personally label them as things that work for me and things that don't work for me. But when I teach, I make sure that my student understands that, what I am teaching him is exactly that baseline. And that if he finds something that works better for him, then he is welcome to use that and go on with it and rock on with his bad self. But if it doesn't work, and find something else, and I give him as many resources and materials as I can find to help him find the thing that works for him.
Exactly. And I think that's what any good teacher would do is give some guidelines and a framework, if you will, and then send the students off to find what they will and determine for themselves what works best. Absolutely. Phoenix is saying anyone can make a website. They don't have to know anything or put correct info out there, which is true. They've moved out from under the bridge trolls. They've moved out from under the bridge trolls or a force on the net. Okay, I think there's a comma missing in there. But yes, anybody can put stuff out there. Hey, Cassandra, I see you're here, joined us too. Let's see here. Although there are many fluffy books, there are tons that have a great deal of great stuff. Granted, that's absolutely true. Although I tend to have come from a Native American start, I can tell you that the book Seven Arrows. This book is written by Hemi House Storm for children, but has many great aha moments for some. And yes, I think the author makes or breaks the book. One of the problems that I have seen, I don't know if it's still prevalent or not, but one of the problems I have seen, certainly around the turn of the century, was that authors started to realize that they could make money by writing books, so they stopped teaching specific things and started teaching the same thing and calling it a different tradition. And so you'd have certain authors who would write all sorts of books for various traditions, and because the more books they had out, the more people could buy them, the more money they'd make. Now, I don't know if that's still an issue or not, but there was certainly that point where that sort of thing happened. And I don't think that's of value to anyone either, because, so you may be versed in several different traditions, especially if you've been doing this for 20, 30 years. You may have been in various groups or associated with various groups who did things differently, and certainly you have the ability to write about that. But when you're the issue I found personally was that it seemed like they call it a different tradition, but it was basically Gardnerian Wicca just done differently. Let's see here. So John's asking, aren't there some common themes that go across paths? That way people don't have to essentially start a new blank page every time they change paths. And
an answer to this.
Sorry.
Study religion. I study all kinds of different religion from all around the world. There is only one universal truth that I've found in probably about 99% of them. And it's this: don't be a dick.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, whether that's do unto others or whatever. You're right. That's exactly what it is. And as far as paths crossing, my take on spirituality as a whole. The whole point of a spiritual path is to try and make yourself the best you that you can be. And so in that way, I don't know whether you consider that crossing or not, but they certainly, I think, have a common purpose. Let's see, Cassandra says, ritual is one thing, but belief and tradition is another. And Phoenix says, there seem to be crossovers. Well, best rule. Yeah, certainly within Wicca, witchcraft, there's a lot of crossover because let's face it, it all has a common root, and that's gardener. So there's going to be some commonality. As far as other traditions, other paths within paganism, whether that's heathenism or druidism or other things, yeah, there might be some crossover, at least as far as things like acknowledgement of multiple deities as opposed to a single deity. All right, so John's asking, why don't books start with that as a goal? I'm not sure what that is. The commonality? And of course, it'll take 30 seconds for him to hear me ask that question. Hey, Beat Girl, you got something? You got anything you want to add?
Well, I think a lot of people who practice have the issue of being very self-absorbed in their own belief. And a lot of them, I'm trying to find the right words for this without sounding like an ass.
Go ahead and sound like an ass. I do it all the time.
Way. And so that attitude of my way is the best way and it's the only way and you have to believe it, I think is why they don't put that in the beginning of all of the books that are out there.
Yeah, and John's clarified what he was saying about that, and that is my take on spirituality, spiritual paths of being all you can be. Why don't books start with that? And I think the better ones do. I think that certainly the books that were out there and that I was reading 30 years ago, I think that a lot that is a basis for what they have done, and what they were writing about was, here's a path. Part of the problem is that most of those books are trying to teach you how. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do ritual. Here are the 8 holidays that witches celebrate. Here's how you do these 8 rituals. Here's how you do a full moon ritual. And a full moon ritual can be basically the same thing as any other asbit, but it's just not on a full moon. And so a lot of times the problem is they're so busy trying to teach you how that they don't always get around to the reason why we're doing all of this. And of course they want to put a lot of history in there, and they want to, all sorts of other things in there that help to make it a 60,000, 65,000 word document so that it's big enough to be sold as a book. But yeah, I think some of the older stuff certainly do. It's been, well, I just looked at my copy of Cunningham's Solitary Practitioner. It was published in 1990, so it's been 25 years since I bought that book. But I seem to remember Cunningham having that attitude of, we're doing this because we want to become better people. See, Cassandra is saying, I don't think any one path is for everyone. I agree. That's why we each follow our own path. She goes on to say, I think spirituality is the same as our fingerprints. They are as individual as we are. We should tailor them to our own path. Absolutely. I am a firm believer that we all follow our own path, our own individual path. I walk my path, you can't, because it's not yours, it's mine. And vice versa, I can't walk yours because it's yours, not mine. But I also believe that a lot of times we practice similarly enough so that we can get together, and for a short period of time we can decide we're all going to follow the same rules and do a ritual together. And because we are similar enough, we all recognize the basics of how the ritual is done, and so therefore we end up doing we can end up having a really neat ritual. See, Christine's saying that ideology smacks of Christianity to her. If you don't believe in my religion, you're going to hell nonsense. And Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that basically what Cassandra is saying is that we each have our own path, and we're all responsible for our own what we each do. And she'll correct me if I'm wrong in that. John's saying, let's see here. He wants more information. Haven't seen much in magical literature about achieving an integrated personality, spiritual enlightenment, etc. As you say, most are about how, not why. And I think that's correct. Most are about how. Because honestly, new people who are new to this path, they're looking for how. How do I do this? How do I become a witch? How some of them and some of them write me email. Hey, how do I curse my enemies? How do I hex my mother-in-law? And they're very serious about this. But excuse me. When you're first new, when you're brand new to this, you're so interested in the how, you're less interested in the why. I know that when I started this 30 years ago, what brought me to this were a couple of things, but what brought me to this was the magic. The idea that I had the ability to shape my life and the things in it to the way I wanted. That was a very, very attractive idea to me. Later, as I started to read and learn about it, the spirituality grabbed hold of me and said, basically said, "You've been doing this for a long time. This is who you are." But I was less interested in the why at that point. I wanted to learn how. How do I become a witch? How do I do these rituals? How do I do magic? How do I excel in this path? And it wasn't until later that I started to realize that the way I excel in this path is to learn the why. It's not enough to know that we celebrate Lunisod, beginning of August, and here's how you do it. You also have to know, why are we doing it? What's the purpose? And again, some books are better than others at describing that. The fact that it's the first harvest. I don't know. I'd been practicing maybe 10 years before I read anything in a book that said, hey, Lunisod is the first of 3 harvest festivals, and this is why we do this. Let's see, I'm quickly going through chat. Let's see. So if we each have our own path and there are no commonalities, and Phoenix says, sure there are, unless you make it up yourself. Cassandra chimes in and says, not true. We just need to feel what is right within our own gut. We are all born with a sense of what is right for us, which is tailored to maybe what we have experienced from a previous life. Now we get Pat saying these are similarities. However, it is up to each person to develop themselves on their own individual path. Do what works for you to help you grow. Actually, chat is getting quite lively. If you're not on the live chat, if you're not on the live show, you're missing quite the chat. I was wondering how long it was going to take Pat to speak up. Let's see here. Just kind of catch up and see if there's anything interesting to continue on here with. All right, so John seems to think if there are commonalities, then whatever they are is the beginning of one path, not being obstructionist, trying to deal with a common idea he used to excuse any difference of opinion. And I don't agree that commonalities are the beginning or the origin of a one path. I think a one path comes from the idea that I'm right and you're wrong. I have this idea. I don't know how true it is, but I have this idea that part of what happened with the Abrahamic God figure was that, you know, you've got these poor Jews who've been enslaved and beaten, and, you know, they're just been beaten down, and so in order to feel better about themselves, they decided, well, you know what we need is this. We need this God. We need this badass God who's bigger and better than everyone else, and basically takes over. So he's the only one. Doesn't matter how involved your gods are, or what kind of a story or history they may have. They can't beat our God because he's the only God. And I don't know how true that is, but it just makes sense to me.
That can be argued since the beginning of time throughout anthropology, though, is, a people suddenly wakes up and decides that there is a power that's bigger than themselves, or that they are a bigger power, and find some sort of a spirituality or religion or path or whatever they want to call it since the beginning of time.
I agree. And I think that, honestly, that whole one God thing comes from a group of people who, on the physical plane, didn't have any power, and so in order to gain more power, to feel better about themselves, they had to have this single God that was all powerful, all seeing, knew everything, so that they could claim that they worshipped him, and he would make things better for them. Like I said, I don't know how true that is or how accurate it might be, but it seems to make sense to me. All right, so I'm reading through here, and I agree with Pat. She says to learn the basics, practice, research, and live it. It really does become a way of life. And I agree. When you are to a point where you no longer have to look up how to do a specific ritual, when you're confident enough in your own self, that in your own abilities to be able to pull something together and know that it'll work, that's when it starts becoming a way of life, because you're no longer tied to the books or whatever it is that you've been reading to get the information from. Once you get to the point where you're self-confident enough to be able to do your own stuff and do it on a regular basis, now you're living your craft. You're making, I don't want to say you're making things up, but you are. You're determining for yourself what's important as far as your spiritual practice. Let's see here. John's saying if we're all part of this reality and deal with it in
cosplay, and they all just wear masks. Maybe one just wears a bunch of fucking masks.
The gods?
Yeah, let's say God is standing there with Michael, and he's looking at a wall, and there's a whole bunch of masks on the wall. One is Vishnu, and one is a Chinese deity, and one is an American deity, and he just says, "Hey, I'm just really into cosplay."
I don't know that I've ever looked at it that way, but the way I look at it is, when we're talking about deity, we're talking about something that is so massive, so foreign that we can't grasp it. And so instead what we do is we see a bit of it, we see a small part of it, and we call that a god or a goddess. It's a small facet of the entirety, because the entirety is just too big to understand. So Kasona is saying it all boils down to live and let live. We all have our own spiritual goals, and as long as we don't interfere with everyone else, it's all good. The problem is some people feel like they have to interfere because you don't believe what they do. I ran into that about a month ago. I'm guessing Pat's asking me, do you remember the phrase, all gods are one God? Like a diamond, the facets are each god, for example, which is exactly what I was just saying. So yes, Pat, I do remember that. Cassandra's saying the deities, holidays, etc. have a strong link to one another, so it does not matter. It does not matter what you celebrate. Tolerance is key here, and yes, I agree. As far as, if I'm practicing something different from you, I have no right to tell you that you're doing it that what you're doing is in some way bad, unless you're being harmful. If you're being harmful to yourself or others, then I think I have the right to say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. I can say that's not the way I would do it. And while I have to admit, I have this tendency to say that's wrong, and I need to stop that, because that's not really what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that's not the way I would do it, and I think that the way I do it is the right way because it works for me. Now, there are going to be others who say no, that they do something completely different because it works for them, and that's fine as long as it works. I do have problems with people who do different things every time, because how do you know if it works or not? If you're not doing it, if you're not doing things the same way most of the time, because it works. If you do it differently every time, how well do you know if it's working? Can you? Thank you, Pat. It's interesting. Our hour is actually up, and once we got the conversation going, and I was able to get the audio going with Beat Girl, it went really quick. I'm actually kind of surprised, and we actually have a whole lot of people watching tonight, a lot more than usual. So I'm really happy with that. We had a good conversation in the chat. Beat Girl, you did fantastic. Thank you for coming on and on the voice chat and stating your opinions. I think you helped make it a much better hour than it might have been.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Well, go ahead.
It's pretty good.
I was going to say, if you decide you want to come back, let me know. I have no problem with that. It's always, like I said, it's much easier to do this when I've got somebody to talk to than to be the only person, the only voice on here. So anyway, with that, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get everything set up to sign out, and we'll do this again next month. Hopefully next month I might actually have a guest. Hopefully this month doesn't go quite so fast. I'm finding that this new software has some advantages over the old stuff, and as I get a better handle on how they all work, we should have a better show. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. We're right at 8 o'clock, I believe that's correct, and we'll see you all next month. Blessed be.
Then, blessed be.